Welcome to AIWO Studio. My name is Tiia Rahkonen and I'm working as a concept designer at AIWO. Today we have really interesting guests all the way from Australia, where AIWO has its own launch team. We're going to be meeting the two of the key members of the team, and they're going to be telling us what is AIWO doing in Australia? What is this all about? So let's go and watch the episode. Tony and Miguel, welcome to AIWO Studio.
Hi Tia, really happy to be here.
Hi Tia, same here.
It's great to have you here. So today we're going to discuss what's going on in Australia. What is AIWO doing in Australia? It's far away from Finland, so today you're here to tell me and everyone else more about that. So to get to know you a little better, could you please introduce yourselves and tell a little bit about your backgrounds and your positions at AIWO company?
Shall I kick off, Miguel?
Yeah, good luck, Tony.
So Tia, I have a legal background, law and finance originally, and I've been involved out here in Australia in some AI startups and also in the life sciences area. And I was running an AI company at the time that I first became involved with AIWO. And Miguel has been a long-standing friend and business colleague of mine for nearly 20 years.
Well, thanks, Tony. I'm Miguel. I've been involved in IT for well over 30 years, had my own IT company. And in fact, that's how I actually got to meet Tony many years ago, doing a computer system in one of his organizations. Tony brought me along to introduce me to AIWO earlier in the year. I saw the AIWO program, understood a little bit about his business, and I was very keen to get involved and see if I could help as well.
Actually, Tia, the whole relationship started quite by chance. It started actually in a local bistro in Perth, where there was a Scandinavian gentleman, actually a Finnish gentleman, who was trying to get a table, and the restaurant was completely full, and I was sitting with 3 spare seats. So I offered him a seat. And he sat down, and I asked him what he worked in. He said, "Well, I work in AI." And I said, "Well, that's a great coincidence. I'm involved in an AI startup as well." And so that chance meeting in a suburban bistro in Perth eventually led to me meeting AIWO when he was out in Australia, and the whole thing has sort of developed over the past 12 months from there.
Wow, that's that's a great story.
Quite a coincidence. So we were very impressed, both Miguel and myself, when we first saw the technology. The fact that AIWO and the team had been able to come up with an entirely new approach to qualitative analytics and be able to roll that out in such a rapid time in Finland. Really got us thinking about the potential in our own country and in the region. So it was really that kind of meeting him, hearing the story, learning about the novelty of the approach, and then being able to come up with a way that we could launch the service in Australia.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Tony, and also understanding a little bit about the formation of the company and having the anthropologists and the scientists and a really nice culture about the way the business has been evolved. It's not just about the business, the way the business has been designed. I'm quite impressed with that, and I think that culture is actually portrayed through all of the staff over in Finland and the way we're trying to develop our team over here in Australia as well.
I think there are some there's some similarities, aren't there, Miguel, about the cultures, the sort of no nonsense, minimal formality approach. I think perhaps the Finns and the Australians are similar like that, so less flim-flam and more kind of what can you practically do. And that was something obviously that's impressed us about AIWO. He's a very practical businessman. So the whole idea, I think, of the service is to solve problems for both companies and for government. And if you can do that, of course, people beat a path to your door. And we think that we hope that we can replicate the same kind of success that you've been having over there in Finland, in our own country, in our own market.
Very interesting. So So usually we like to tell our potential clients or people who are interested in our service that what are the differences between qualitative analytics and other services like text analytics, because that usually confuses people. So what would you say? What makes qualitative analytics so unique? What impressed you the most?
Well, that's a really good question, Tia. And I think in Australia, I'm not sure whether they have it in Finland, but in Australia, quite often now, there is a survey that you're either asked or requested to do at the end of a telephone call or at the end of an email. They say, can you please fill out a survey? And those surveys are the sort of quantitative analysis. It's either a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
A net promoter score.
Or a yes or a no type thing, right? And I'm seeing them more and more frequently. And obviously the organizations that sit behind them are desperate to gather data on what the customers are really feeling about their product or their service. With the qualitative analysis, which is what AIWO absolutely specializes in, it's far more human in its approach. It's identifying words, phrases, sentiments, themes, and it's taking all of that and bringing it into a way that has never been done commercially before. And I think one of the things that really struck me is that if we're able to develop this into the Australian market, I think it will be incredibly successful. I'll give you an example. If there was a new product that had just come out and they said, do you like it 1, 2, 3, or 5? And you just do your scores. But what happens if you say, I don't like the label? You can't actually say that. But with the AIWO system, it'll pick up the text. It'll pick up the call center. It's an omni-channel experience. So if there's enough people that say, I don't like the label, then the people who are manufacturing the product can modify it or identify it or change it. Whereas in the static analysis, the word label doesn't even come up. So you won't even be able to find that data. What do you think, Tony?
Yeah, I really like the stories that tells about how the system can find hidden data. It can find hidden themes, and the Brexit analysis, where football was one of the factors that the English were worrying about, which no one would have ever anticipated, is one. And there's another one that he tells, regarding the postal service. So we have similar things here in Australia. That people don't sometimes in the banks and others, they don't really understand why customers are complaining. They know there are complaints and they know they relate to charges, for instance, but they're not really sure below that what is it that's got people upset, or what would they like. And I think the power of AIWO's system is that it's able to drill down to those types of concerns and themes. And it's really that sort of value. And that's the type of feedback we're already getting when we start talking to large organizations here. They say, look, we've got masses of data, we've got all these surveys, we've got all these copies of net promoter scores, but what do they mean? And some guidance in, all right, this is really what people are thinking about. The other factor in Australia that's quite interesting, we're a huge country, as you're probably aware. Landmass wise, we're 1.5 times the size of Europe. So we've only got 25 million people, but they're scattered in this huge area and very diverse geographically, climatically, all sorts of things. So what people might be thinking in northern Queensland may not be what they're thinking over here in West Australia. And a system that can do this omni-channel analytics and drill down to a region, a certain part of the country is very valuable. And the banking services, some of the national companies like the telcos and people like that can look at different demographic areas. They can look at different geographic areas and derive a lot of information, particularly out of their call center data. So yeah, I think it's going to be very useful to a variety of customers here, probably in the similar sort of verticals to what you've been addressing in Finland.
Well, you've already met some local organizations in Australia. Yep. So have you talked about the big steps or goals for the future with your Australian launch team? What are the big goals that you'll be focusing on?
We targeted initially about 8 or 9 different verticals. So telecom, energy, banking, and a series of others. And then we looked at the leading companies in those sectors. And they were a combination of both national companies and because we're based in West Australia, West Australian companies. So the goal was to introduce the system to at least 1 or 2 in each of those verticals, and to have them commence to use the system, provide us with some feedback, and if necessary, any tailoring that we might need to do for the Australian market. And then, of course, to have them as reference customers in the same way as you've been able to do in Finland. Because really, the progress in Finland's been quite remarkable, I think, Miguel, in the time frame, the number of companies and the range of companies that they've been able to assemble.
It's actually quite astounding, Tony. Every time I go back and speak to the team back in Finland, there's another major player on board. So the uptake is huge. I'd be very interested to see how many people actually say no to actually how many people say yes when they're actually piloted the system. And that also brings me to one quite nice little point. I understand that the uploading and an onboarding of Aiwo into an organisation can normally be done in a few days, which is quite remarkable, because generally when you start putting in a full AI system that interrogates, multi-layers of data, whether it's written documentation, whether it's call center tapes, whether it's emails, whether it's social media, to have all that data being analysed in a very, very short period of time is unique in itself. And the fact that the training is to utilise the program is virtually, the user experience is quite pleasant. You can sit down in front of it and it's quite intuitive. You're not having to learn, I've got to push F3, it's none of that stuff. It's very easy, simple to use. But I suppose one of the key things that came out of a meeting we had a couple of days ago with one of Australia's largest banks was the ability to drill down into multiple layers and go further and further down and understanding the data at a very, very high level of accuracy. And I'll give you an example. If you've got a query coming in about bank fees, and they just see that all the time, but to be able to say, well, that bank fee inquiry came from this particular state, that particular city, that particular branch, to be able to drill down so that the actions from the senior management can go directly to the source of the inquiry or the source of the problem. So for me, that's one of the key things about this Aiwo program and how it will be so well adopted and adapted here in Australia.
I think the biggest challenge here is going to actually be showing potential customers how different it is, because there are a lot of similar types, I don't say similar to Aiwo, but there are a lot of other types of analytics systems which have pretty similar features. And I think some of the people who first look at Aiwo, wonder, firstly, can you really do this? Because they seem very surprised that you're able to onboard so quickly and have the AI actually go and do the analytics without having to train it or prompt it with surveys or keywords. So I think our challenge here is really to firstly try and articulate the difference, and then secondly get them to use it. So this idea of short pilot periods where people actually get to look at what it can do in terms of getting information out of their data, I think is a great idea. So we're sort of in the early stages of that project, and the reception's been very good. I mean, you've already put information up on your site about the first customer, which is Nearmap. So this big aerial imaging company, which actually started in Perth. It's now a multinational, but it originally started here in our city. And that was a nice, I suppose, early customer. But we're very confident there'll be a number of others coming very shortly into the family. And it'll be interesting to see, any differences of view between the utility of the service here and of course, how it might be performing currently in Finland. One of the areas here that I think is going to be very, very interesting and quite challenging is the post-COVID environment, or the environment sort of coming out of COVID here. So we've had the usual lockdowns, very large economic disruption, border closures. So my own state's locked up. You can't really get in and out unless you go through the quarantine period. So there's a lot of organizations and governments, government departments as well, trying to work out, how are people going to behave in the future about this, whether it's, are they going to spend money? Are they going to, are people going to travel again? Where are they going to travel? There's all sorts of issues that the governments want to know. And if they can't plan that, it makes it extremely difficult to formulate good policies. So we've been focusing in this conversation a lot about private businesses and corporations, but I think here government as well, state and federal government, and the departments like health, social services, transportation, education, all of these could benefit from the sort of analytics that I was able to do.
Yeah, and that's true, and I think that's the uniqueness of our service, that it suits to everybody, regardless of the business sector. So, what are the key benefits of launching the service, our AIWO service, in Australia?
Tia, I think there are a couple of main benefits. I mean, one's clearly the size of the economy. It's surprisingly large for such a small population. So we're about the 14th largest country by GDP. So there's a big economy here that you can launch the service into: banks, telcos, energy companies, and large government departments. But another good reason is it's such a good springboard into Asia, and particularly Southeast Asia. So we're on the same time zone from Perth into Singapore. It's actually closer to fly to Singapore than to fly to Sydney. So what we've been able to do already, we've already reached out to a large banking group based in Singapore. And I expect that we'll be able to use the operations here in Australia, both as reference customers, but also as a springboard into places like Thailand, North Asia, Korea, Japan, and other countries in the region. And then ultimately, of course, into the United States.
So, Miguel, what do you think? Because when you go and present our AIWO service to organizations, there are quite many benefits that our service can provide to businesses. So, what would you say? What are the main benefits that our service provides?
That's a really good question, Tia. I've been through developing a lot of the marketing material behind the scenes for the last 6 months, and over that time you get to become very intimate with what is actually the system's really about. So I suppose for me there's three real main points that I like about this. The first thing is it's an omni-channel experience, and I think I might have mentioned this a little earlier. The fact that it can interrogate and review your SMSs, your telephone calls at a call center that are recorded, your data that comes in emails, the social media, this omni level of data that can come through, and the ability for the AIWO system to be able to review this information in real time and then bring out reports that could be passed on to management and various departments within an organization. And I'll give you a very simple example. We've got a call center with, let's say, 100 people sitting in a call center working 8 hours a day. There's 800 hours per day worth of call center data that's going through. You multiply that by a week, so you got 4,000 hours worth of data. Now, our experience has shown from the research we've done that each 1 hour of recording time on a call center takes up to 6 hours of reviewing to come up with a report. So that 4,000 hours of phone calls at a call center in just 1 week would take effectively 1,000 hours of man time to review it all, identify what the sentiments are, and then come back with a report. And then you've still got the issue of someone being subjective with their views on what that call actually meant. With the AIWO system, however, this thing will review the data coming through a call center in real time. So that 800 hours worth of call center time that was recorded that day, following morning is available for review. And it will pick up diamonds in the rough, conversations and things that were never ever picked up, like I mentioned earlier on about the label on that little bottle. So for me, that's a real key thing for me, the fact that it can do it. And this drives it all from one fact. It's not set by keywords. We're not looking for the word interest. We're not looking for the word fee. We're not looking for the word COVID or recession. It will automatically find them and identify them and drill down further and further and further so that the management can understand exactly what it is. So for me, this is a game changer. And I've heard the word disruptive technology said hundreds and hundreds of times. But mark my words, this is a true disruptive technology.
Thank you, Miguel. That was a really, really good ending to our conversation. And thank you, Tony and Miguel, for both of you. This was very interesting to have you here. And we're very excited that we have this unique Australian launch team. And it was great to have you.
Working with you.
Thank you. And yeah, so until next time, this was AIWO Studio, and we'll see you on the next episode.